you had to by hand put the wet laundry in this big, they looked like two rollers with a crank. And you put the wet laundry, like just a few garments at a time, into these two rollers, and then you cranked it yourself to get the water out.
I
And
think
then just basically most people hung their clothes up outside because electric dryers didn't come about, or weren't perfected, or weren't readily available to the public until, again, like around the 1950s, 1960s. I remember my mother always hanging up laundry all the time hanging up laundry. And I've been in situations where I didn't have access to a washing machine. And my first reaction in those situations was, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I said to myself, wait a minute, you have two hands. Wash your clothes out by hand with soap and water and hang them up. And that's what I did in those situations. But the funny thing was, I didn't initially, it took me a few minutes to actually think of the idea that I could actually wash out my clothes myself by hand and hang them up. Because you're used to a washing machine and dryer. You're not, it's like you're not used to functioning without those things.
Yeah, I think I remember some times when I was younger. I was in camp and I had these socks, and I only had a certain amount of socks, and basically it was a whole deal because I was scared into not using the laundry program at the camp, because then I'd lose the clothing that I had.
Yes.
So I wound up just not having socks, and then I tried to clean them. And as I cleaned them, I ruined the elasticity. And then I had to be, at one point, it was Erev Shabbos, and I was wearing just really wet socks for Shabbos. And then I developed eczema on my feet because I stopped wearing socks because I ran out of socks because I wasn't using the laundry. And it was a whole massive,
You've got a very good point. I've had camping experiences where I don't know what the problem is with camp, but clothes in camp get lost like crazy. And I often thought to myself, if I were in charge of a camp, what I would do. If I were in charge of a camp, I would get a big bin with a washboard for each bunk, and we would make washing your own laundry an activity and hang them up and put a string across the bunk